answer. Do you know what it deals with? Treasury note number 11 of 2008. I'll take your silence as an admission of ignorance. Treasury note 11 of 2008 deals with unsolicited bids. 2008. When you proudly said that, well, you know, there was this mandate from before that we were following, and it was these people in before doing wrong things. Well, there was a Treasury note at that time which specifically spells out how to do things. So you cannot rely on an argument that says that you were following a mandate unwittingly from previous time, from a previous evil area. And that's why you got into this trouble. Because if you'd been concentrating on Treasury notes, you would know the correct procedure for unsolicited bids. Now, our friend over there said that we don't like to close the list of potential bidders. I'll tell you why. It's to open it up for people to take an angle and to get work through unsolicited bids. That's exactly why. Because the whole idea of putting together a panel is to have a list of pre-approved suppliers that you know will comply. You've been through the entire process with them. So please, you must not think that you pull the wool over our eyes on that one. My colleague, Honourable Smith, referred to declaration of interest. Well, if you once again, you said quite incredibly, ma'am, that there was no need for declaration of interest. Well, I'd like to refer you again to Treasury Note 11 of 2008. 2.2e of that Treasury Note specifically says that there has to be a declaration of interest. And if you take the time, 2.1 says that you've got to use an unsolicited bid only when you've done a feasibility study, only when the product is innovative, only when the product represents an innovative approach, only when it is a new and cost-effective method of service delivery. It specifically also says, under 2.3, that it must be a product that is not an easy supply. Something that's new, something that's original, i.e. not coal. Coal's all over the place. There's nothing new about it. It's been around since time immemorial. And now suddenly you're saying that, oh, we must find a new. The bottom line here is that you've opened this process, you've opened that thing so that you can allow people like Tegeta to sneak in an unsolicited bid. Now, here's where I'm going to prove my point. You have also advised us that how on earth can you be accusing us of only using Tegeta? There have been 33 other suppliers that have been forced to go through this process. Stated right here in your documents. So can you tell us today that you will commit to giving us a full dossier of every single one of those 33 other suppliers that also applied, went through all the prescriptions of the procurement process, and for some reason were turned down, and only Tegeta and Msambiti were approved? Will you be able to give us that full list? Not in terms of your procurement processes, because you think you're still dealing with weird mandates from 10 years ago. I'm talking about in terms of Treasury rules, Treasury notes, and in terms of the PFMA. Can you give us that undertaking? Because that will show that you went through a competitive process. But I believe that you will not be able to show that. Thank you.
I'm going to start with the compliance issues, Mr. Chair. At the time, Honourable Member, Eskom was exempt from the triple PFA, and therefore the Treasury notes do not apply to Eskom. However, we do have provisions in regard to unsolicited bids in both our procurement policies, and coal has very specific specifications. So each resource is different, but my colleague on my left will elaborate on that. In respect of the declaration of interest, while there was no specific requirement for people at negotiation team level to do that. Eskom has a system of annual declaration of interest in terms of the various legislation, and that is done annually. What the primary energy colleagues at the time did not do was do it for each specific transaction, and that process has been corrected and implemented.
To answer your question about the 33 suppliers, we can provide the details of the 33 suppliers that came under, that are referred to in the document.
No, I don't need a list of names. I need a dossier which shows that they all went through exactly the same process as Tegeta and Msumbiti. Can you provide that?
Yes.
Right, Comrade Chilwan. I'm going to jump you, Comrade Kekan. Yeah, after I've covered everybody. Yeah.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm going to ask just one direct question, Chairperson, and then I will continue after they've answered me. I'm going to ask who was the CEO and the chairperson of the board between 2008 and 2015 March. Thank you.
Well, I was chairperson of the board somewhere from March 2015. Before that, I was...
No. Who was the chairperson of the board between 2008 and March 20... Did you say 15?
Yes, when the deal was...
Yes. Who was the chairperson and who was the CEO?
The chairman was Bobby Gotzel at one point. The chief executive officer was Brian Damas. And then there was Zola Tsotsi. Brian Damas was there. And then during Mr. Tsotsi's tenure, I think there was also Tadiso Matona.
All right.
Chairperson, I think you understand why I'm asking this question. Because as this committee, we deal with the past. The past can only assist us to arrive at a conclusion on how do we go on with the situation. Thank you. I think we've noted that. We will discuss it at a meeting, Chairperson.
Okay.
My second question, I don't know whether it's a second question or it's a preamble question, Chair. How much, Mr. Molefe, how much does this Tegeta contract cost, and how long or what is the period that you have agreed upon with?
The period is a 10-year contract. The value of this specific Brakfontein contract is approximately 4 billion.
How much? Okay.
I was requested to respond to the commencement date of the contract was from the 1st of April 2015 for a 10-year period. The value is estimated at 4 billion.
How much are they charging you per ton? I don't know, call it tons or ton or truck, I don't know.
I would like to give the cost in a rand per gigajoule. The base price for this contract is 13 rand 50 cents per gigajoule as the base price.
Okay. Thank you for that information. Chairperson, there's this page, man. There's where
I thought you would want to know, is 13 rand compared to what?
no, I'm still
Oh,
coming
all
to
right.
that one.
Okay, that's fine.
I'm still coming to that one, but there's this page that I'm looking for. Can't find it. On the 4 billion, is it? How do you calculate it? The economics people calculate it. Inflation, increase. Is it? I don't know whether interest free, something like that. Between that period of 10 years, is it going to increase or is going to be at that 4.8 billion?
The base price of 13.50 Rand is subject to escalations as per the contract. There's an escalation basket. Annually, there are some elements that escalate yearly, and there's some elements that escalate or reduce monthly. For an example, it is diesel.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm still on my second question. You get, I'm trying to synergize the information. Chair, there's somewhere where it was written that this contract of Tegeta was done hastily and I think, what is the correct word of English? It was in an emergency, hastily. I think, CEO, you mentioned it earlier, if I correctly remember. But I just want to get, because I've heard so many members, they've been, procedures were not followed. But I'm just going to ask a direct question, Mr. Mliff. What happened? Can we get a background? How did Tegeta ended up getting this contract out of all these issues that are happening? Thank you, Chairperson. It's my first question. Second,
Yeah.
okay.
This contract was negotiated over a 2-year period, and so this is the Brackfontein contract. Perhaps what you are talking about is the prepayment contract. The prepayment contract with Optimum that was bought by Tegeta from Glencore. That is the one I think Ms. Mazzoni also was referring to. But that is not in the PwC report. That is a completely different deal, unless if the chairperson allows us to go into that particular transaction. To explain what happened there.
Yeah, just to interrupt. Chairperson, with your indulgence, I think this is a matter of national interest and Tegeta and whatever, Brackfontein, because they come out with one thing. I think we'll really ask for your indulgence so that we hear the explanation. Maybe it will assist us. I don't know. It's upon on you, Chairperson, to decide.
All right. No, it's fine. When Honorable Mazzoli asked the question, I said, let's pack it. I did not say let's dismiss it. I said, let's pack it. Let's deal with the PwC reports. And when we're done, then we can find time to, because I didn't want us to go there and then get sidetracked from the essence of why we're here today.
So you say we pack it or they can
I'm
respond?
saying, no, let's pack it. They will respond to it later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Chairperson, then let me go to, then it means I'm going to my second question.
All right. Yeah.
On page 2 of the report presented, slide 3, I think it's the response in terms of the steps which you have taken out of the PwC report. There's where you talk about 78%, 74, 78%, 73 of major coal suppliers that are non-black owned. Can we just get a background on that one? And I will link it up, Chairperson, to the question, the first question that I asked, that this Tegeta, how long are they going to operate? Can we just get an indication of how does these contracts of Eskom operate? Because some of them, they were there, they were approved, they were appointed, where there's no synergy, there's no compliance in terms of the treasury regulation, supply chain management, even of their own. But at the same time, because they operate, Eskom operate as on its own business model, if I can say, which they will say, she has just said that some of the treasury regulation has exempted them. If we can just get a background on that one. Thank you.
All right, let's go to your last question. I think the issue around percentage of, I think the question of where do you get your coal supplies from, and then disaggregate it. Can we also deal with it later, because it will then go beyond, because I see that Tegeta is only contributing 6.7% of the total supply. The rest comes from elsewhere, and you want them to just expand a bit on it. Let's note it. It will be responded to.
Chairperson, they will just note it and then they will respond
to it. Yes.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity, Chair.
All right. Comrade Kuno.
Thank you, Chairperson. I wanted to start by saying that we are good listeners here, Scopa, and we need to be taken seriously. I think we have our stakeholders that we work with, and it will be good and proper if we are given information that we can use profitably for South Africans. And I'm talking to Soli, because what he's saying today, the information that he's giving today, I think it will be improper for us if we don't correct that, because we always say to others, like the Auditor General, give us correct information. What he gave us earlier on was not what he gave in the previous meeting. I think you know what I'm talking about, the effect of the communication between him, between Treasury and Eskom. I think today we got another side that we did not know, and the reason why it made us so angry was because they are not communicating and not giving correct information at the right time. So I just wanted to put that matter into perspective, that we're really taking our job seriously and we're good listeners and we don't forget what we have asked and what you communicate to us. But Chairperson, when you look at the PwC report, we were told that there were officials who were suspended. I wanted to know who are those officials and how long have they been suspended? Those officials who didn't take the compliance into cognizance. But again, there's been a reference, Chairperson, that the 1034 rules only came into application after March 2015. My interest is, what kind of rules or regulations were you using before 2015? That's one question, Chairperson. The other question, Mr. Molefe keeps on telling us more about pre-qualification, and I don't think we are all privy to that. If he can explain thoroughly what is this pre-qualifications, so that we can also apply our minds if this contract was awarded fairly to others. And there are contracts that you have said. I think my question adds to what Comrade Shilwani has asked. I'm not sure if it's part of those that you said we should flag and ask later. When you started with your briefing, that 3 minutes that we gave him at the beginning, you talked about contracts that are about to lapse, or the contracts that have already expired. Can you explain to us these contracts? Because I think later when we really deal with page 2, your third slide, we'll then dwell into that. If you could just explain thoroughly to us so that we understand what you're talking about. And when you say that your records have, as part of the 43 points that you had that were concerns, that you have done 39 of them, and you said the record keeping is one of those. Are you saying if tomorrow, as Scopa, if we agree that tomorrow we go to Eskom, are we going to find proper record keeping methods in Eskom? The last question, Chairperson. Tegeta was appointed in March 2015. But when you look into the big file that we have, page 363, you had a meeting as Eskom with Tegeta on the 23rd of September 2014. How do you relate? How do we marry these 2 dates? Do you have a pre-meeting before you give a contract to a particular person, or what really happens?
All right. Can we respond to those 4 questions? Yes.
Honourable Chair, I'll deal with the compliance one first because that's easy. Before the current procurement processes, the current procurement procedure in Eskom has been updated to include our compliance to the triple PFA. Though, when our exemption lapsed, we had to include it. So, but prior to that, we did have an Eskom supply chain and management procedure, and these are updated as the laws change. Okay.
All right, the pre-qualifications, the record keeping.
It is correct that PwC identified records keeping as one of the elements that we needed to address. And since the first report was issued, and the second one, we have extensively looked at our record keeping and looked at making it more centralized. So I'd like to say that our record keeping has vastly improved based on the outcomes of the PwC report. With regards to the question on, we had a meeting with the Tegeta, I think you said in 2014. So the process that happens is that there is our engagements with Tegeta commenced in July 2013, and therefore there are several meetings that happen with the supplier, several elements that we look at in terms of our due diligence. So the minutes that you have available are a result of various meetings that we've had with suppliers, that we have with suppliers to get to a point of a contract. So there is a pre-meeting before a contract is signed, to answer.
The pre-qualification?
May I please request clarity on the pre-qualification question?
Earlier, it was said that the pre-qualification has, unless if I'm not quoting him verbatim correctly, the pre-qualifications has always been a method that has been used by Eskom. I do not understand this pre-qualification. Do you do that to all the core suppliers, or what is it? Can you just explain this pre-qualification so that we can apply our minds and to be, because what has been the problem, or what is in the public out there, is that they were given preference So we're trying to understand that preference and applying our minds. But there's a pre-qualification that the CEO and the chairperson keeps on referring to. What is this pre-qualification? At what stage do you give a supplier pre-qualification? Can
No,
you take us through that process?
Yeah, it's not pre-qualification. It is awarding without a tender, which is unsolicited bid. So it's unsolicited. So what we were explaining earlier is that the rules that were designed by Eskom in 2008 allowed for Eskom to procure coal from without a competitive process from 2008 on an emergency basis. So that is what we were explaining earlier. And that is what the chairman was explaining, that the 2008 mandate allowed Eskom to procure coal for emergency purposes on an unsolicited or without going through a tender process. But what I then added on was that, but Eskom has been doing this even when it has not been emergencies. For example, in the case of cost plus mines, those mines did not go through a competitive process to gain the advantage that they have. And I also said, over the last 5 years, we've spent 75.4 billion rand on the cost plus mines that are not black owned and that did not go through competitive process. However, these are things that we are now beginning to change at Eskom. The minister has insisted that there shall be black economic empowerment and there shall be competitive processes in awarding contracts.
All right.
And we don't do cost plus mines anymore.
Okay. Yeah, there was a question on officials suspended. No, I'll go to Comrade Boy and then we'll. Officials suspended. Were the officials suspended for how long? And
Listen, you remember the terrible load shedding in 2008. This is what precipitated that board resolution about unsolicited bids. We have now eliminated that because we no longer have load shedding. We shouldn't have such pressure on us. But as I said, there is now the risk of load shedding again because we are not getting authorization to buy more coal as we stockpile for winter.
all right, officials suspended. Did we have officials suspended as a result of this contract? Yeah.
Yes, there were 4 officials that were suspended as a result of the coal quality issues that were identified in July 2015. Of the 4, and there were also laboratories that were suspended as a result of the coal quality situation that we received, as well as a supplier that was suspended. Some of the suspensions have been lifted in different cases. So for the 4 employees, 2 have been lifted, the suspensions.
And the other 2?
One of them is a subject of the disciplinary process, and one of them, the employment with Eskom has terminated.
All right.
Chair, I can also add that when we did get allegations that the Tegeta coal is not up to standard, we did suspend the Tegeta contract in, I think, August 2016. And we investigated those allegations, and we had to send coal to the South African Bureau of Standards to verify if the allegations are correct. And when the call came back from the South African Bureau of Standards, we lifted the suspension on Tegeta. So Tegeta did not get special treatment. We did suspend at some point there. It was this Braakfontein contract that was suspended.
Now let me go to Comrade.
It's getting more exciting. We will concentrate on the PwC report because we should go to page 26 and page 27 of the PwC report. In terms of the file, it's 180 and 181. Because that's the essence of everything that we talk about. My first question, if I can shoot Chairperson.
Yeah, sure.
Who was in the negotiating team? And who is the negotiating team? Because the negotiating team and its powers seems to have overrun everything that was ever legal within Eskom. The negotiation team, Baba, seems to have too much power and didn't follow all the necessary processes. I'm coming to that one. I just wanted to know who was negotiating. Because did they go to procurement? Did they go to the financial cost? Did they go to all the embodies that are supposed to have been put together when you start negotiating? But, ma'am, you know, in Parliament you must not mislead us. Don't do that because you're doing it at a price that can become very expensive. What Pricewaterhouse says and what it has advised you, and I wonder what happened. That is G. The contract appears to have been compiled hastily by copying and pasting sections from the contract. That's what PwC says. And you seem to be talking as if the contract was smooth running, was negotiated, it was quite. But PwC, when it came before us, the contract was not put together by an institution that is of integrity. This is what PwC say. It's in the page, sir. It's not me. I'm not reading from Marxist-Leninism. I'm reading from what PwC have told us.
Well, I can give you more time if you were doing that. But you...
Let's go to what other concern PwC have expressed, and which brings more questions about the contract. This is F. They say there was an addendum data E of the contract dealing with the BEE ownership undertaking is in the form of a letter from the supplier. It didn't originate from Eskom. The supplier came with the BEE letter and said, this is how we are. What type of circumstances are these? And can it then be saying, our people should be suspicious of this particular one? Because the supplier comes with a letter and says, I'm BEE compliant, this is my letter. But Eskom in itself as an institution doesn't take note of what that particular development it is. Can you take us through that? How does that happen? Let's deal with K in that particular one. There's quite a lot of issues still. Although it was reported that an updated coal procurement strategy exists, this was not provided for review, nor was there any evidence found that demonstrated that the procurement was in accordance with the approval of strategy. What happened here? This negotiation team, when it was given powers, it then just continued with ignoring your procurement processes internally. Now it brings in the discrepancies that happens within that particular process. That's why there's a concern about how Tegeta got this particular deal, because it never followed the necessary procurement processes. Because that strategy was put aside until there's a reason you could be able to motivate. But this is all what PwC have raised, and we have not yet answers to that particular one. It says, ma'am, just to help you on this thing of costing and pricing, on N, it's the report that was provided to you on page 27, Comrade Khuno. It says the relative percentages in the price escalation basket differs from the prescribed basket mandate standard, together with qualities and price per energy unit, price adjustment, are critical financial parameters too in multi-year contract and justifies tight oversight and consideration. No rationale for the deviation from the standard was provided. So it means that when you're costing them your 400 billion, you didn't follow anything that is prescribed within your own mandate. You thumbsucked it, as you have thumbsucked it again today. 4 billion, it's easy to call it the most easiest figure, but you didn't follow the necessary processes prescribed by your own contracts. And how did you arrive at that 4 billion? And it means that the person who was getting the tender was not even worried, because your costing price and everything that was related to this costing, or whatever the cost was supposed to be, which is the taxpayers' money, man. I know it's not your money, so 4 billion, it doesn't come as easy as like that. How did you arrive at all these things when you have not recognized what is within your own system? How should Parliament be able to take note of how you have handled? Because if the contract has been so clumsily organized and even your pricing systems have not been in place, how do you come at all these things called 4 billion? Where did you derive that type of a figure? And misleading us is a problem. I just wanted to forewarn you again. My last question, Chairperson.
Yeah. Okay.
It's on quality assurance, man. It's still it's 5.43. That Myamezel's view. It's on page 27. It is evident from our findings above that coal supply was contracted prior to the receipt of some of the required evaluation documentation and requirements. The contract was signed on 10 March 2015, despite the supplier having failed pre-qualification technical requirements. For the supplier of coal, it further appears that the condition preceded of a successful combustion test was not met. This is what Pricewaterhouse is bringing to our attention, man. How has this gone through your scrutiny teams? Or was the negotiation team so powerful that you could override all these things, write the wrong contract, write the wrong pricing, give a total different quality, and still get the contract, and still get whatever it is, whatever other issues the CEO would want to raise in relation to Tegeta? But for us as people who hold you to account, how do you go through a contract that doesn't stand the test of time, and it does just get it easily? 4 billion thrown up, but no proper procedures to be followed. How does that happen, man?
Right.
In terms of one of the questions, I'm going to go through all of your concerns. In terms of the BEE requirement and the element that PwC indicated, when negotiating with the supplier, we negotiate BEE requirements for the supplier. We request that the supplier then provides us with a letter that says that they will meet the various obligations, so that they can then sign off on that letter. And that is why there is a letter from the supplier saying these are the obligations that they will meet. However, they were discussed with the supplier prior, and Eskom's transformation objectives were indicated to the supplier.
Just a minute.
Ma'am, it's always good to go generous in generality. I'm not looking for generous answers. I say to you, let's go to F and look at F at exactly what even the concerns of PwC was and what PwC is saying. It's F, ma'am, on page 26. Talk about Tegeta. Don't give me a general running of Eskom. I'm not even there. I don't want to run it. Give me the answer in terms of what the concerns of the PwC and how did you tackle those particular concerns. If I finish the sentence, it says, undertaking is considered a more appropriate way in order to avoid misinterpretation and ambiguity. That's what your question was from PwC. What do you say, ma'am?
The finding from PwC on the letter that we received from Tegeta is indicated here. One of the things that they indicated at PwC, within PwC.
All right, okay, maybe let's do this. Just a small technical thing. If you could use this mic. Yes. Yeah. Meaning you must actually physically move because the cameras do not see you well. Please just move. Yeah, move further. That's it. Yeah, unfortunately. All right, yeah, use that mic and continue. Yeah, it's fine.
With regards to the black economic empowerment and the finding from PwC, it is correct that the PwC, when they came through and did the assessment of the contract, they indicated to us that having the supplier write and say that these are the undertakings that they will do, it is preferably that it is then written into the contract, then it is signed on the contract. So we had negotiated with the supplier, and in the negotiations we had indicated to the supplier that they should write to us and indicate their black economic empowerment initiatives. PwC highlighted that and said those elements that you want to warrant for the suppliers, whether it's a black economic empowerment or anything, should be written into the contract at the beginning. As a result of those findings, we then amended our contracts so that we can then include supply.
Yeah, I think, ma'am, all you needed to say is I
correct.
agree with the
Yes.
findings,
Sorry.
and we have made the necessary adjustments, because all these other explanations do not change the finding, and they don't challenge the finding.
We agree with the finding on the letter.
But I must caution, that guidance from the chairperson is not original. I want to hear the views of Eskom after PwC has highlighted this. That's a shortcut to nowhere. I just want to caution you about that. I've asked the question, not him, but it's a shortcut to nowhere. Because I want to know that how does originally in your own contract, how did you allow such a situation where PwC becomes the one that makes the observation, and then you yourselves only respond to PwC, but it seems as if you have never thought about black empowerment. It's not in your contract. It's all I wanted to, that's my first interest. And why must suppliers wait and be told by you, please bring the certificate, you see, after you have already made your point? I thought that the laws of this country are quite obvious. Unless Sol is not doing his job properly, to say, how do you write up a tender? And these are the expectations in the tender. But this one seems to have got a nice preferential treatment. That's where we're trying to find out that, was it preferential for them to have been able to supply that certificate? Or are they also African? Maybe we are missing something there.
Perhaps, Chair, if I can assist here, there were a lot of things that were wrong that were identified in the PwC report and in other internal audit reports. And I think the initial question of Mr. Boy of who was involved in this may become relevant, because then maybe what we should have reported on is, so the people that did all of these things that resulted in these findings, were there any disciplinary action against them? The people that did not follow the correct procedures, that did not that resulted in 48 PwC findings. What was the consequence management? And I must confess that we have not looked very closely at consequence management, largely because quite a number of them, I believe, may not be at Eskom, or we can go and follow up and see if there is any consequence management. But we have accepted the findings of PwC, and what we have done was to be constructive and fix everything and make sure that it does not happen again in the organization. Thank you.
With due respect, sir, you see, we're not talking to ourselves. The public has been told quite a lot about this particular deal. And we're highlighting the problems with this particular one. The shortcut that we are suggesting says, let's put dust to everything and go to consequences. The question is, what type of human beings or people or professionals would write such a poor contract? And that poor contract cost the taxpayers about 4 billion. And then you expect us to just, put cement over it and forget about it. It can't be like that. It has to be explained so that even on the side of Scopa, it becomes important. We always tell you that we are interested in the detail. All these other things we are not interested. The detail is what is being provided. And that's where we want the answer. So that we can see if there are weaknesses within Eskom and how do we address them, sir, you see. But if we plaster over it in our approach, we'll end up not knowing what we should be writing as a resolution. Should we improve Eskom's capabilities or not, you see. But if you want a shortcut, it's really going to benefit you alone. Myself and the public are not going to know what has been going on in Eskom. And we are interested to know if there was a negotiating team that did the procurement processes, how does that happen outside your own scope of how you explain yourself? These are details that are quite necessary. And that's why I'm saying we rather take each other and get an explanation than the shortcut and plastering that would want to be suggested. Consequences we'll discuss later, sir. I'm still on the one on the PEE. What happened here?
I'm going to attempt to answer the BEE question. In terms of the BEE question, and if I incorrectly answer, you'll advise. Then the negotiations with the supplier were to ensure that they meet Eskom's requirements for black economic empowerment, and quite specifically in the coal space, we aim to ensure that our suppliers are 51% black owned. So we negotiated with the supplier in terms of what steps are they going to take to get them to 50 plus 1 share is what was negotiated. And as a result of that, the supplier was then requested to provide a letter with those steps to get them to a 50 plus 1 black ownership. The finding from PwC indicated that requesting a letter from suppliers, from their supplier, we should actually put it into our coal supply agreements and not have a letter, which is the finding that is there. And we agree with that finding that we need to include it in our coal contracts going forward. Have I answered the question?
You can proceed, ma'am.
To the other questions.
There are quite a lot.
There was K, there's N, and the question of the team, if you recall, who were in the negotiating team.
Okay. In terms of the other question came in terms of the updated coal supply strategy. So a coal supply strategy was tabled at our board. I apologize for not being able to give you the exact date. And at the time that the PwC team came through, they had requested the full extracts of the report, and we had provided with them the presentation that was given. So that is the coal supply strategy, and it talks to the overall transformational objectives of the supply of coal to Eskom. With regards to the negotiations...
Just there, ma'am.
Sorry?
You know, throughout your reporting, PwC complains about that. That you seem not to be knowing the dates, or you seem to be confusing dates. What happens within yourself and the board? Is that the dates are not, whoever writes minutes of your minutes or your work, doesn't he have knowledge of dates? Or is it just normal with you that you don't want to recognize dates? Because dates are very crucial because they tell us at which stage did you start these processes. As Honorable Huno have shown, even though your prerequisite, also the dates were upside down.